Good morning. Beautiful. Oh, it stopped. It's already stopped. It's one of those days, clearly. How are you? Good morning, Grand Rising. Welcome to Wake Up with Sonia Poulton and guests. It's exactly 9 a.m. and already something doesn't want to work for me, but who cares? Welcome to the show that knows if you are listening to legacy media weather reports, you are already lost, but welcome to the spot where you will be found. Full moon in Scorpio today. Scorpions have laser vision. They cut through the crap at speed. And that is what we are aiming to do today with or without an intro tune. How are you all on today's show? Writer. Oh, I can hear me coming back at me from YouTube. And on today's show, you can see it's going to be one of those days, peeps. On today's show, writer and academic Dr. Niall McRae is here to talk about world depopulation. Yeah, it's a real thing. It's a real thing. Yes, it is. We'll also be joined by Coach Thomas Godfrey, who will be here to talk about 10 mindset shifts for the Great Awakening. And you can get a free signed copy of this book. Yes, indeed, you can. And we'll also be talking about Starmer and Macron and Zelensky in Kiev. And we'll be asking, is it a tissue or something else? Because the internet is divided. Oh, yes, indeed. And Trump and Israel. Plus, Lawrence Fox is back in court again. An update on the Diddy trial and viewer geoengineering watch. And I will be doing a tribute to the brilliant, truly stupendous, unprecedented individual who has sadly passed and left us, but he left such an incredible legacy. Milton William Cooper. I wanted to do it last week to coincide with his birthday, but I just didn't have time and I didn't want to rush it because he's a man who deserves, well, taking some time. Yes, indeed. And we'll be ending on it's transformation season. So it's time to transform. Yes, indeed it is. And what else today? I see Pope Leo made his first address yesterday, and he's talking about never again war. It's quite funny because obviously what they always do as soon as anybody comes to any prominence on the world stage, they start digging into his past. And it turns out his brother is probably a bit of a liability for him in some respects. They found his brother's social media posts, and they are very interesting indeed. And yesterday, did you enjoy the heat wave in the UK? What a load of bunkum. This was at least one legacy media headline. Households in England urged not to go outside between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. on Sunday. See, this is really bad stuff, right? It was sunny, even warm to hot at one stage, but absolutely not dangerous levels. And this, of course, is propaganda. We know it's all part of the same thing. Yes, indeed it is. Friday's show was truly international. We had guests from South Africa, Dubai, and the Philippines all speaking to us. And I love that. I really absolutely love that. And some news. You may, if you're in the live chat, you may notice that we no longer have moderation. That's right. We're adults, right? From today, there are no moderators on Wake Up. Before I go any further, I want to thank our glorious moderators, Crazy Bunny, Soul Sound, and Christine, who joined us recently. I appreciate you dearly. I really do. And I look forward to seeing you being able to properly take part in the live chat. So why have I decided to do this? Well, in part, it's an experiment, and I will either be proved wrong or right. It's that simple, black and white. Here it is. I believe that the internet should be able to moderate itself. And I've said so many times. And now I want to test if that theory is true on my own live stream. Live chats reflect society. Can the people within them get along and hold each other appropriately to count without an overriding power, keeping them in line? I sincerely hope so. And on my stream, at least, I'm about to find out. I will be dipping in and out as per. And if I see anything defamatory or abusive, I will kick the person out myself. My mods have been absolutely brilliant. They had to take a lot of flack doing that job. And I really do appreciate them. I will not take any nonsense. Anybody knows me at all, I will be like, you're done, you're out. But I really don't want it to be like that. I want it to be a free flow of conversation. I want people to feel that they can chat freely. And when you look at like the bigger news sites, they never use moderation. And I thought, I'm damned if I'm going to be more censorious than a major news site. Absolutely not. And I realise that what will also happen is some weaker members of society may feel empowered by the lack of moderation and seek to run riot in our comments. But these are really trolls. And the same applies. Ignore them when you can. Don't let them railroad you. I'll delete them when I can because they serve no good purpose. But I want to see how people in the live chat deal with them. I'm going to make every effort to ignore their very existence. That kills them. And I recommend you do the same. So let's try this, people. Let's try this, people. Let's see if we can set an example of how to run a live stream where people are not subject to censorship because they don't need to be. Let's do it. Let us do it. Thank you so much. Thank you, Queen. I love this idea. It's time. I mean, the thing is, I really do appreciate my mods being there for the start of Wake Up because we didn't know what was going to happen. But I've pretty much seen it all now. I mean, I've been called every name under the sun. I've been slandered and libeled left, right, and centre. And I actually don't give a flying fig. I actually don't. And I took legal advice and I'm not responsible for what people say in the live chat. And it's simple as that. Kravos, often a troll can just be someone with a different opinion. Yes, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about somebody with a different opinion. I'm talking about somebody who behaves in a troll-like manner. And having done this for a long time, I can smell them a mile off. Anyway, let's welcome the new. Let us welcome the new. Thanks, Jack. Let's welcome the new. Leaders yesterday, Coalition of the Willing. Sure, you've seen it. Leaders in Kiev. And interesting stuff. Starmer tweeted, great to speak to POTUS. What they did was these people all went to Kiev, the Coalition of the Willing. The idea is to end conflict between Russia and Ukraine. And they spoke to Donald Trump. Actually, I've got Starmer's tweet here. There it is. Great to speak to POTUS from Kiev as we come together to call on Russia to agree to a full and unconditional 30-day ceasefire. Space must be created for talks on a just and lasting peace in Ukraine. And they are actually saying that the agreed starting date, although it's not yet been agreed, will be today. And that there should be a full and unconditional ceasefire for at least 30 days starting today. And so a number of leaders traveled to Kiev and called on Putin to end this as if he's solely responsible for it. And Putin said earlier on Sunday that Russia was committed to serious negotiations with Ukraine. In a post on X, Mr. Zelensky described it as a positive sign that the Russians have finally begun to consider ending the war, but added there is no point in continuing the killing even for a single day. I loathe the victim narrative that Zelensky likes to trot out. Much like Netanyahu, they have the world leaders on their side, but somehow they are still being bullied. Somehow they are still the victim. And I absolutely detest it. That's right. It is like a kid's game. Starting from now, Queen, starting from now. And the Coalition of the Willing, if you're not familiar, basically it's a coalition of 31 countries that came together. They pledged the support for Ukraine against Russian aggression. This is wording according to Wikipedia, because I like to dip into Wikipedia to see what the mainstream narrative is. So look at that, right? The support is pledged for Ukraine against Russian aggression. The suggestion is that Ukraine have done absolutely nothing for the last decade, right? So really the question is, will they get their ceasefire today or not? Or is something else going on? And on the train journey, really, this is what everybody's talking about. Most people are talking about this. They're not talking about the Coalition of the Willing. They're talking about this. What is this, people? What is this? The moment was caught during a train ride from Poland to Ukraine when reporters entered a room. Let's have a look at the video. And I would like your feedback on this. What do you think is happening here? Let's see. Oh.
Super. On va bien. Merci.
Jackie says, I think that picture has been debunked not on the internet. It hasn't. The internet has absolutely been divided. And many people say that is absolutely a tissue. But then you have people like Alex Jones saying absolutely unquestionably, this is Coke. That's what they say. Now, That to me actually looks like a tissue, and it looks like what they're doing is when the people come in, when the photographers come in, they want to clear up the tissue and a teaspoon from the table. See, even in our own comments, there's mixed feelings. And I have to say, look at the facial expression. And why did he swipe it away? Right now, there is a potential reason for this. And I think that's what's interesting. I do think their reaction is interesting, right? Now, it could be that there was just a tissue on the table, but if there was just a tissue on the table, why would they look so guilty? Let's have a look at this from another angle. Because I'm curious. I'm actually curious, and I'm curious that so much mixed feelings about it. You can see more clearly now the tissue there. There's also a spoon by Friedrich Merz, the German Chancellor. And both Friedrich Merz and Macron behave really, really odd around it. Lenticular Cloud said it's suspicious as hell. They look caught out and buzzing. His face said it all, says M. So do you see what I mean? Even in our comments, people have mixed feelings about it. But what you have is these big accounts on X saying literally that the European leaders are all as high as kites. Actually, Randy has just said it. So that's a very serious charge to make against people. But many people say, no, this is just a tissue. This is just a spoon. And the reason that they acted so shifty was when the reporters came in, they wanted to clear up the table. Now, all of that just seems a bit questionable. Jackie said he probably used the tissue after doing so Jackie, Jackie, you've confused me. She said it's been debunked, but now you're now saying he was doing a line. Clear that up for me, sister. I knew someone who left used tissues all over the place. I have to be fair. I have used tissues all on my desk. Like I'll use them once, I'll bung them down. Naughty, terrible habit. It does look like plastic. It really does. But this should be addressed. And the reason this should be addressed is because loads of people are talking about it, right? But they won't address it in legacy media. And in fact, the imagery they've used in legacy media is after the tissue has been removed. There you go. After the tissue has been removed. So I don't know, but I do know that everybody is talking about it. And what's interesting is actually French newspapers have tackled it, one or two French media outlets, and they are saying that it's an absolute conspiracy theory, that it was Macron grabbed his handkerchief and the item Merz had was just a stirrer. A stirrer for what though? Because didn't they just have water on the table? I think they just had water on the table. Blue Nomad said Macron is aging fast like Blair did. Indeed. Right. So I don't know, but maybe you guys can tell me. Cadder says it's a tissue of lies. And I tend to agree. Definitely a plastic bag. Cocktail stirrer. They are openly criminal and we still take orders from them. I mean, fact. Right. So I think even in our own comments, there are mixed feelings about it. And I want to reflect that because the truth is, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. And I wanted to know what people thought. Queen wants to drug test them all. That sounds like a plan. Mark wants to know where was the peace coalition when the UK and US invaded Iraq twice. Indeed. Right. Which brings me to something that I really need to tackle before we bring in our first guest, right? Because I think this is some fascinating stuff going on, right? We talk often about the incredible power of Israel over US and UK politicians and elsewhere around the world. But what has happened in the US regarding Netanyahu? Because something is up. Something is most definitely up. And Trump is off to the Middle East, but it would appear that all in the US and Israel, the garden is far, far from rosy. In fact, looking at some American newspaper headlines, you have to wonder what the hell is going on. The New York Times, first of all, set the cat among the pigeons. Bear in mind that Jeff Bezos, who owns Amazon, recently purchased the New York Times. And they did an editorial on Friday, I believe it was. And it was by Thomas Friedman. And it was, this Israeli government is not our ally. So that, first of all, is astonishing. And then the Washington Post have followed that by saying Trump repeatedly bypasses Netanyahu, stoking dismay among Israelis. Now, be clear, if you're not already aware, when newspapers write headlines, it's usually because they've had a whisper in their ear, right? Most definitely, 100%. So somebody from the Trump administration is making it clear that the love affair between the US and Israel is, if not over, on extremely shaky ground. And we've heard rather a lot this weekend, and I've been doing some digging, and I've talked to some of my contacts. And see, so what happened, obviously, was when Trump took office in January, he and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu from Israel, they were closely aligned on how they were going to do this, right? How they were going to approach certain pressing issues, such as the war in Gaza and what was going on in Iran. But in recent weeks, it has become absolutely apparent that the relationship between Trump and Netanyahu has become strained. That is absolutely apparent. And some people say, my contacts say, that some of the recent differences between the two leaders on key strategies and positions has put this relationship in jeopardy now, because the thing that people don't account for, don't allow for, is that whatever you may think of Donald Trump, he can turn on a hair, on a dime, however you want to describe it. Because if he feels that somebody is trying to take control of him or slighting him in any way, they are in trouble. And the problem is that Israel has been showing its power over America rather a lot at the start of this year. And that, according to several of my contacts, is part of the problem. But there's more going on. Other people have suggested, and I don't know whether this is true or not, and that is that President Trump, because it's being reported, during his Middle East tour, will be announcing US recognition of a Palestinian state. Now, if he does that, it's going to be insane. He will turn. He absolutely will. And the thing is, we're seeing all signs of it, not just newspapers, not just the utterances that are coming from the administration, but from people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, as one example. Marjorie Taylor Greene, of course, very much a MAGA politician. And one of the things that people are saying to me is they are over the endless wars. They are over America constantly funding this war that it seems to involve Israel at every turn. And there's only so much, direct quote I've been given, there's only so much Zionist loyalty that Trump will take. That's what I've been told, right? So I thought was interesting. I just clipped this. And this is Marjorie Taylor Greene. And I think she probably sums up what a lot of them are thinking right now. Have a listen. Brief.
I don't think we should be fighting wars on behalf of Israel. And many Americans agree with that.
And many Americans agree with that. And I love to hear that. And Jan still fully supports Trump. But the thing is that I think you'll find that a lot more people will support him if he cuts ties, right? If he cuts ties. So there's lots of rumors prior to this Middle East visit, and we shall see. But word is AIPAC, the very influential Zionist lobby, have overplayed their hands, and they are getting shut out of the Trump administration. That is the word. And Kristen, you're right. Excuse me. You're right to be cynical. I'm cynical given his son-in-law and his donors, but still hopeful. Something's happened. Believe me, something's happened, because normally it's all really watertight and it's like total, almost subservience to Israel, but not over the last 4 days. Something has changed. Something has changed. And I think it's a matter of finding out what that could possibly be. But let's hope. Let's hope he'll carry this out. Indeed. Mike Waltz happened. Now, there is rumors that Mike Waltz, who, of course, part of the Trump administration, was involved, allegedly, in using a signal type device that was created and reported directly back to Israel. And the rumor is that Mike Waltz has essentially been betraying Trump for Israel. That's a rumor, allegedly, gossip. Don't know if it's the truth. And I only picked it up simply because it was mentioned in the comments. Exactly that. And so we shall see. But I just want to say, this brief clip, this is what is very wrong with the world. This is sycophancy, royal sycophancy. This is Prince William and Kate arriving in the royal box at the VE concert held at London's Horse Guards Parade. And just listen to these people as they're arriving. Did you all see Sadiq Khan? Literally one of the first sycophants. Let me just show you him. You can see second row back next to the lady in the white top. There is Sadiq Khan. Watch him stand up before anybody else. Watch him. I'm doing it on slow so you can see it. Look at that. He goes to stand up for anybody else. And there he is. Sadiq Khan. So-called socialist, but there he is, fawning over royalty as per, stealing all the limelight from veterans. Now, that is a perfect comment. Absolutely it is. The fact is that we're all sick. We're all sick and tired of being sick and tired. But when I heard that screaming, I was like, these people are the problem. Royals on their own, almost less of the problem. The problem are these handmaidens all around them, the people who hold up the system. I mean, royals obviously are a problem, but they're one big club and we ain't in it. And thank goodness for that. That's what I say. Thank goodness for that. Thank goodness we aren't. And I see that Lawrence Fox is in court again this month. Busy month for him. Several court hearings. So obviously, he appeared in Westminster Magistrates Court on April the 25th to deny charges that he shared pictures of Miss Narinder Kaur on social media. She had waived her right to anonymity. It was regarding an alleged tweet in April 2024. And he has elected for a jury trial and set to appear at Woolwich Crown Court for a pre-trial hearing in relation to those charges on May the 23rd. But he's also set to appear this Friday at Westminster Magistrates Court again over allegations he encouraged people to vandalise ULEZ cameras in London. And in a statement, Met Police spokesman said Lawrence Fox, 46, of Peldon, Essex, will appear before Westminster Magistrates Court Friday, 16th of May, charged with intentionally encouraging or assisting the commission of an offence. The charge relates to posts made on social media site between September and October 2023. And in this case, the offence would, if he's found guilty, would likely be criminal damage, which can actually carry a very severe penalty of up to 10 years. But just as an aside, and away from Lawrence Fox, the fact is Londoners hate and loathe ULEZ as much as we hate and loathe Sadiq Khan, for the most part. And it was Sadiq Khan's idea to expand ULEZ zone to cover all 32 boroughs in London. That happened in August 2023. And it stoked so much anger because actually it's really problematic for smaller businesses. And at one stage, somebody had contacted me and said that when they drive out of their drive, if they turn right, they're fine. If they turn left, they're into ULEZ and then they have to pay for the ULEZ zone. We hate it. It's a blot on the landscape. We absolutely don't want it. And so it is universally unpopular. And of course, you've had people going round who have been disconnecting the ULEZ cameras. And of course, I am not promoting a criminal damage because I don't want to be in court or anything like that. And Markson said, just a step to pay per mile. Isn't that? But that is what Sadiq Khan has suggested, because let's just bear in mind that Sadiq Khan is the co-chair of C40 Cities. C40 Cities is essentially a coalition of mayors from all around the world who all buy in, so we're told, to the fake and hoax green agenda. And he's one of the co-chairs of it, absolutely leading it from the front. And it's just a huge amount of money that people are not paying. It is, but it is problematic for Londoners. And we just loathe him. And I saw this petition going around at the weekend. I'm sorry, I've seen some daft petitions in my life, but this one was a petition to allow everybody in England to vote on the Mayor of London. No. And the idea is to get Ant Middleton from Reform in. But, you know, they are forgetting if they think that is the basis, because the idea there, of course, is that Khan keeps getting in because London is very multicultural. That's what they're saying. If they make it all over the UK, do they not think that they're going to have Muslims from Bradford or Burnley or wherever voting as well? Come on now, please think, join up the dots. But no, I live in London. I live in Greater London. I live in Teddington. I vote for the Mayor of London. I certainly didn't vote for Sadiq Khan. And I think it is a ludicrous idea to have people from all over the UK who are not invested in London thinking that they can vote on it. And there would be more. There would be more. Right. Okay, what else do I want to say before I bring in my first guest? I looked into this whole thing to do about with Spain cash withdrawals, because there's a lot of stuff that was coming out on the internet over the last week, which actually talked, and because it had come from the end of April, where there was this whole idea that there were new rules in Spain where cash withdrawals over 3,000 euros are under even tighter and stricter controls than before. Now, Spain has for a while had controls on withdrawing of money, but this seems to have upped the ante. That's what's happened. And so what they're now saying, because I decided to fact check this, see what's really going on, is that from now on, anyone withdrawing 3,000 euros or more from a Spanish bank must notify Spain's tax agency in advance. If you're planning to take out 100,000 euro or more, you'll need to give at least 3 days notice, 72 hours notice. For smaller sums over 3,000 euro, a 24-hour notification is mandatory. Now, that's problematic, right? If you fail to notify, you will also risk a fine of between 1% and 10% of the amount withdrawn. As I said, they've done this in Spain for a while, but they've upped the ante now in terms of the fines. And it's not massive withdrawals that will raise the red flags. They're saying that this is all about Spain stepping up its fight against tax fraud and money laundering. No, it's not. We all know what it is, right? We all know what it is. This is another step on the way to a cashless society, because people are going to be like, oh God, I can't even withdraw my own money without having to notify the tax people. It's far easier to transfer it digitally. That's really what we're going to come to. I bet none of these rules will apply to them. The money, it's a good point, Sean. The money you put in your bank is not your money. Reform requires urgent reform. Did anybody see, talking about reform, Nigel Farage's manifesto in the Mail on Saturday? Interesting. I'll talk about that later if I have time. So anyway, I just wanted to fact check that. So Spain have actually been doing that for a while, but what they're doing is they are stepping up their fines, which is great. Literally. So it will all come down to the amount you plan to withdraw, the purpose of the withdrawal, and your identity. I mean, if you think we're not living in a surveillance society, I have a bridge to sell you. This is not about transparency. It's about theft by the bank itself. It is our money after tax. And what right does any government have to stick their nose in and tell us how we can spend it and how much we withdraw at any moment in time? They are clearly trying to kill cash. They are clearly forcing through CBDCs on everyone. And that may have worked before, but we've had such an awakening, like such a great awakening over the last 5 years. So things just aren't washing the way they used to. And this idea that they're threatening people with fines up to 150,000 euros if they withdraw money without notification is deeply problematic. And Trevor says people are getting around it by taking out smaller amounts each day. Got ya. And just one thing before I bring in my first guest, and that is Asda didn't respond to my query, by the way, about a drag queen reading to kids at a food bank. I mentioned that last week. Jean Hatchett, activist and writer who comes on here often, she had highlighted how Asda were now working with food banks, and there was a drag queen who was reading to children. Now, I made a report about drag queens about 4 or 5 years ago now, called Drag Queen Story Time, Child Grooming in Plain Sight. I absolutely oppose it. Professionals will tell you that drag queen story time is now seen as a form of non-contact child abuse, and I absolutely subscribe to that idea. Drag queens are parodies of women, often really vulgar, with often really vulgar names, sexualized names. They are absolutely not suitable to give an audience to children, for an audience with children. Absolutely not. So I wrote to Asda saying, why are you using drag queen? Nothing against this one. Personally, I don't know this person, but I want to know why you're using drag queens. And also, I think there's something really horrible and cynical about that, because any kid who has to attend a food bank kind of event is already vulnerable by dint of poverty. So I already have a problem with that. I was born into poverty. I know how vulnerable people can be in poverty, and I object, but as they have not responded yet. But if they think I'm going to forget it, they got another thing coming, because I'm not that kind of woman. Right. Now going to bring in my first guest, who is also not that kind of man. Here he is, Dr. Niall McCrae. How are you, Niall?
Hello, Sonia. Oh, and just to remind you, my name is actually spelt the Scots Gaelic way, pronounced, sorry, as Neil rather than the Irish way.
I hate myself already. Dr.
Don't worry.
We went through this before. I have two issues with memory, right? One is to do with dates and one is to do with names. And I've always had it. And I always say it was because I fell off a table when I was 18 months old, but I mean, that just might be an excuse. I might have some sort of disorder. Welcome, Dr. Neil McCrae. He's going to talk to us about depopulation, and a very important topic at that. And so first of all, why are you interested in depopulation? What is it that has made you go, hold on a second, there's something going on all over the world and I want to start tracking it? But what was it that pulled you in, Neil?
Well, I became aware of the depopulation agenda, or more acutely aware of it, when I was writing my book on the climate crisis, or the climate scam, as we might call it, Green in Tooth and Claw, which came out last year. Clearly, to me, what's called green is really just a continuation of the eugenics which developed in the aftermath of Charles Darwin's Origin of the Species and pushed by his cousin Sir Francis Galton. And so really eugenics got a bad name with the Nazis in the 1940s. And so after the Second World War, it was rebranded or recloaked in green. So there's very definitely a depopulation agenda going on, but depopulation can occur for all kinds of reasons. It's not necessarily something that is forced into happening, but a combination of factors can lead to society failing to procreate.
And that is what we're going to discuss, because you've written this article, you've sent me some fascinating information on depopulation around the world. And you say cities stand empty as the Chinese population goes into reverse. But first of all, the one thing I want to tackle straight off the bat, because you tackle it straight off the bat, and that is, why is it such a taboo topic to discuss this?
Well, there is a very dystopian agenda lurking behind the scenes. But I think if you talk about population and depopulation, you're necessarily going to get into controversies about things like abortion, euthanasia, and a whole range of topics which are sensitive, or they're made to be too sensitive for people to talk openly about.
And we need not be too sensitive. We've become overly sensitive. A lot of it is an agenda, obviously, to silence us and stop us discussing what we must discuss. And you're right, there are a multitude of reasons. We're going to talk about it. And also, I should point out, everybody, that headline I've just written doesn't entirely reflect the piece, because there's so much more going on in the piece than that. And so we can start wherever you want to, really. And that is, you say certain types of information are accepted, such as the tallest mountain or the names of countries and capital cities, right? And it goes into what we've just said right at the beginning. But let us talk about what is happening, for example, in terms of India and China, because they've always been known as like very population concentrated societies. So what is going on there?
Yeah, well, India and China are only alike in that they are big countries with big populations. Otherwise, they are very, very different. For a start with China, China under Chairman Mao and the communist regime went from being a largely rural country with a population probably around 400,000 to 500,000. So it was the biggest population in the world going back to the early 20th century. But Chairman Mao really pushed for women to have more children. So it was kind of ironic, because what he was making men more like women. They were dressing the same, they were expected to take their place in the workforce, but at the same time they were encouraged to have as many women as possible. And of course, Chairman Mao wanted all the children to be put in communes, which was never popular with mums, of course.
Sure.
But the birth rate did accelerate, and so that by towards the end of the 20th century, China reached 1 billion people, or so we're told. That's the official
That was what I was just going to say to you, because you raised that up in this piece, right? Why would they mislead us into believing that?
Well, if communist regimes can fabricate tractor production figures and all kinds of data for their 5-year plans, why wouldn't they also lie about people? If Chairman Mao's desire was to have a growing population, then they simply produce the figures to show that. And there's no doubt that Chinese population was growing, but it seems more and more likely to me, from my research, that it probably never reached as many as a billion. But the population increase was there, and when Deng Xiaoping came in following Chairman Mao's death in 1976, he opened up China to foreign investment, and China, of course, as we now know, became the workshop of the world. Huge cities were being built, megalopolis, so the groups of cities joining up together, often places we've not even heard of, cities that are 10 to 20 million that most people in the West don't even know about. Huge cities to populate the factories producing the goods for all around the world. And to get the people into the cities, they've basically done what amounts to rural clearances, a vast transfer of people from the agrarian economy to the cities. And now, of course, we've got a big problem, because with Trump's tariffs, which may be a temporary thing, but it's certainly been a shock to the system, and workers are being laid off everywhere across these Chinese industrial cities.
So what confuses me about the whole 1 billion mark, right? Because on the back of that, obviously, that was when China introduced their one-child policy. And actually, what you say in this piece, which I didn't realize, is you said deaths overtook births 3 years ago. Deaths overtook births. And the Chinese population has gone into reverse. That's a curious statement.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just deal with the official data to start off with. So yes, 3 years ago, officially, China's population started to go into decline, but the percentages are tiny. It's like 0.1 or 2% or something like that. But that actually amounts to a lot of people. If the claimed population is 1.4 billion. Don't just take this from me. People can go on the UN Worldometer website and watch the statistics live, and you will see the Chinese population. As you watch, you will see it drop steadily. And I took the just as for writing an article later, I took the number at 2 o'clock on Saturday, and I'm going to be comparing it with 2 o'clock today. But it's gone down by about 20,000 just in those
in
2 days.
Wow, that is quite an interesting reversal, though,
so
isn't it?
It looks like it's going to be a drop, and this is by official data, remember, a drop of 3 million this year.
That's hugely significant, hugely significant. So India, again, you're saying that India's increase has slowed down to less than 1%.
Yes. So,
again, that's significant, isn't it?
Yes. So India overtook China a few years ago, and India's population is still steadily increasing, although the rate has actually come down to less than 1% increase per year. And that one of the vital statistics when you're looking at population is the fertility rate per woman. And India's is not that much above replacement value now. It's about 2.2, and replacement value is about 2.1. So in India was predicted by most sort of mainstream forecasters to stop rising about 2060. I think it's going to happen before that. If you look across the Far East, more than half of the countries now in the Far East, the populations or in decline. It's not just China. So Japan, South Korea, Hong Kong, Thailand, Nepal, By contrast, the Philippines is still rising steadily, as is Indonesia. But all countries, there's hardly a country in the world now where the birth rate isn't falling, so that eventually more and more countries will start to decline. And the other region of the world that's now in steady decline, Sonia, is Eastern Europe.
Yes.
Every country in Eastern Europe, and by that I include Russia, the population is falling. Romania, Bulgaria, even Austria, all falling now and have been falling for about 3 or 4 years consecutively.
This is, I mean, it's very interesting. You sent me some stats yesterday, and you said that at I think it was Sunday morning, 8 a.m. And of course, you've written another piece as well about 2025, the year that population went into irreversible decline. So before we go on to that, I want to talk a little bit more about Europe, because we hear that often, don't we? Right? We hear that Europe is in serious decline in terms of births, and people say it, and people say that there's an agenda. What do you think is really going on here?
Well, if I could just make a simple factual statement here, that countries in the eastern side of Europe, the population is falling. Countries on the western side of Europe, the population is still rising. And the one thing that makes a difference is mass immigration. You know, Britain would not have the continually rising populations it does without the huge number of migrants that come every year. And of course, the other factor is that some communities that have established here, certain Muslim communities, have still got very high birth rates. So that's what explains the difference between Western Europe and Eastern Europe. But even with mass immigration, there are clear signs that Western Europe too will reach its peak soon. And Germany has already past that peak. Germany lost 500,000 people last year.
This is really significant. I mean, really significant. And obviously, let's bear in mind that before I say the next thing, that we're obviously on YouTube. They have a medical misinformation policy. Some people are suggesting in the comments that there may be assistance, some kind of assistance that may have encouraged some form of sterilization. Any thoughts on that while staying within the very difficult remit of YouTube?
I mean, I think it's quite clear that a range of policies have led to falling birth rate. But I think it'd be safe within YouTube guidelines to refer to a chapter in my book, Green in Tooth and Claw, called The Population Bomb, where it's quite clear that the sustainable goals, as they're called, of the UN Agenda 21, those 17 sustainable goals, all of them could be interpreted as means of reducing the population.
Fact.
And we know that sperm count has been plummeting for decades now, alongside the birth rate per woman dropping steadily. I think there are probably some environmental factors. I suspect that there are things in our food and in the atmosphere that contribute to this. Whether this is done deliberately or not, I don't know, but estrogen levels are very high in the water supply, in plastics. So we have got quite a toxic environment for that deters procreation, I believe.
Quick question from the comments. Amy says, Sonia, can you ask him which population is rising the most, particularly in the UK, please? Do you have an answer to that one?
Well, I think it's highly likely that the rapidly growing segments of the British population are in the Muslim communities, but we've also got quite a large African, Nigerian, that kind, those sorts of countries, and in West Africa, they've also got very high birth rates. So it's not just about the people who are coming in every year; it's that people that have settled here tend to have larger than average families.
Do you, I mean, it strikes me, and I've had this conversation before with girlfriends, and I feel that there's been almost something very active which have dissuaded us from having children. I have girlfriends my age who do not have children. I'm quite unusual as somebody who's had a career and still has a career to also be a mother. And because a lot of women of my age in my social groups, they don't have children. What do you think about that?
Well, I think going back to the 1920s, when feminism was first pushed, I don't know if they called it feminism back then, by the Rockefeller dynasty.
Right.
And it was pushed because they wanted to get women into the workforce. But of course, the Rockefellers and other oligarchs of the time were also very keen on eugenics, as the whole intelligentsia was in the interwar years. And David Rockefeller, fast forwarding to the 1960s, that sort of decade of emancipation, big, time that was for the what we call second wave feminism. And second wave feminism seemed to be much more about women getting out of the home, pursuing their careers to the expense of having children and fulfilling their sort of maternal role. And language is very important. So there's a term, stay-at-home mothers, which to me is sounds quite a sort of derogatory term.
Right.
And that sort of language is used to make women who do stay at home to look after their children feel like they're sort of letting the side down.
Like a non-job, even though it's actually arguably one of the most important jobs that we could ever actually do, raise the next generation. But I completely agree with you. It is like that. It's very much, it feels derogatory. I'm absolutely proud to have been able to have had my career as a journalist and also be a stay-at-home mum. I designed my life that way, and I wanted to raise my child. I didn't have her for somebody else to raise her. Simple as that. And so let's talk about this. There's some people already in the comments talking about is it the Deagel prediction? They're already talking about that in the comments. What do you want to say about that? Because that is something you talk about.
Yes. So just for people that don't know, the notorious Deagel predictions made around 2014 was for a dramatic and incredible fall in population in the year 2025. Well, we're almost halfway into the year 2025 now, and we haven't so far seen something that would result in a mass cull, although of course we can't rule that out. And if you look at the leaders drum beating for war at the moment, then that could be that could certainly contribute to that happening. But what we do see, and this is why you asked me on today, Sonia, is that, and this is sneaked up on us without many people being aware.
Go on.
In 2025 is the year that reversal in human population has gained momentum. It's quite clear now that the falls, and I talked about some consecutive annual falls in some countries, so that some countries the population has been falling for 4, 5, 7, 10 years or more, some countries. But what we're seeing in 2025 is an acceleration of the decline. And like I said, China, based on the figures that I've been collating, is set to lose over 3 million people this year. And if I could just go back to the point about official figures very quickly, because I don't believe that China really has a population of 1.4 billion. I think this is a figment of state propaganda, and it serves China in various ways. China always wants to be a bulwark against the perceived imperialism of the USA. And so bragging that it has the largest population, or now the second largest population in the world, this huge 1.4 billion people, kind of gives it a sense of strength and resilience. Sure, its population is very large, but it's probably falling much faster than the official records show. And if it ever was a billion, it's certainly less than that now.
That's such betrayal of its people, though, because if they've lied about that and then introduced a one-child policy on the back of it, it's very serious. It's very significant betrayal of the Chinese people.
Yeah, and this is what happened to real people. They were given massive fines for having a second child. Under the one-child policy, it wasn't actually policed universally across China. You know, in the rural areas, people still had, you know, as many children as they wanted, but it was monitored very closely in the cities. And when Deng Xiaoping came in and he brought in the one-child policy, by that time the Chinese realized that you don't necessarily get strength from an ever increasing population. And now, of course, they're realizing that they've got the opposite problem. They've got a falling population. What can they do about it? Well, as Viktor Orban has discovered in Hungary, which has had this problem for probably 20 years now, it's a very, very difficult thing to reverse once population starts going down. And in China, they made a radical change to the law recently. So it used to be that the young man was expected to save and buy a flat, you know, one of these high-rise apartment blocks, whereas China's become much more materialistic, whereas the young women could spend on clothes and cosmetics and that sort of thing. But the divorce rate surged, and one of the perceived reasons for the surging divorce rate was that the woman could move in with the man in his flat, divorce very soon after, and cooped up in this one-bed flat, and they would get half of the value of the flat. So what the Chinese government did was they completely changed this and made it that whoever bought the flat, whether it's a man or whether maybe it's his parents even, they would retain the full value of the flat. But all that's done is that whereas before men were becoming reluctant to marry, now it's made women reluctant to marry. So it hasn't worked as a solution.
But I agree really with what you said at the start, and that is actually complex, isn't it? It's complex. There are a lot of factors which contribute to this. And some people are mentioning things like, transgenderism, for example. People are literally getting, their genitals removed, right? And crazy, insane stuff that's going on. But there's two comments here that I want to run past you and get a response from you. Jackie said the West imposed the one-child policy on China. Is that accurate?
Well, I think the West has, for a long time, had a lot of influence on China that we don't necessarily know about. I mean,
right.
Through the likes of Kissinger, and sometimes China is referred to by sort of New World Order conspiracy theorists, of which I'm probably a part-time member. It's referred to as a laboratory for the technocracy that they're developing. So yes, I think there's probably some truth in that. Yeah. Right.
And the other one that I want to read is from Vendetta, who has definitely come from a different place than I am, but that's what's great about what we do around here. We allow a free flow of ideas. And Vendetta said, lowering population sound good for the planet. There are too many of us. Do you believe there are too many of us, Neil?
I don't think so. I think that what's happened is the people in power, that there are global forces that have pushed massive flows of migration, and that has been very unsettling. And if you take countries like the UK and the Netherlands, they're not big countries, not big landmass, and they've taken in a vast amount of immigrants, and you do have obvious problems of overcrowding. But I think the planet as a whole probably can easily
we've got loads of space. We have loads of space. I think it's a political idea, the idea that we're overpopulated. And when I think that that puts you in the company of people like Boris Johnson and his father and people like that and Kissinger, then I don't want to be in that kind of company. You know what I mean? I don't want to be in that kind of company. But I agree with you. I think perhaps the distribution of people is problematic as opposed to the overall image. Neil, before you leave us, what do you want to make sure that everybody knows about what it is that you're saying?
I think that, and I suppose it's teaching Granny to suck eggs here, but don't rely on the mainstream media for all your information. You won't hear much about this on the BBC. And as you said earlier, Sonia, population and depopulation have been made into very sensitive topics that people would rather not discuss. But I don't think there can be any topic more important than our humanity and its reproduction or lack of reproduction, as the case may be.
Save the Irish, says No One's Flower. I've got you. Save the English. Got you. I think there's absolutely nothing wrong in people wanting to retain their cultural history. Nothing wrong at all. Okay. And I think that the problem is that what the New World Order leaders want us to do is become this one big homogenous whole where we all blend into each other without any distinctions. So I'm all for that. I really am. Although, Neil, I have to say, if it was down to me, I would get rid of every single border in the world and just let people go where the hell they want. But that's me, and I'm a troublemaker. But it's been absolutely lovely to have you with us today. Thank you so much. Very insightful. I mean, a lot of people are like, you don't get this on mainstream media. Exactly. And he's absolutely right. What Neil has just said is exactly right. Be more discerning where you get your news from. Dr. Neil McCrae, everybody. Lovely to have you with us.
Thanks, Sonia.
Have a wonderful Monday. Take good care of yourself. Excellent. I feel educated. Yes, I do. And I like a good education. Right. Before we bring in our next guest, I want to just do a Diddy update. Diddy, of course, is Sean Diddy Combs. And there's been a slight delay in his trial. Last week was all jury selection. Now, it's only a slight delay. And what they're doing is they are continuing the jury selection today. And actually, what's happened is the judge made this quite bizarre comment. The whole idea of not picking the entire selection on Friday was because he was concerned that the jury that was selected may go away over the weekend and get cold feet about the trial. Very interesting. But the opening arguments will still take place this week. Maybe not today, though. And I think the accusations are obviously flowing thick and fast, and this is a live case, and we respect that. But the accusations are very much that Diddy, who, as people around here know, when I was a music journalist, I interviewed twice, including going to his home for a one-to-one, and I felt completely safe. But then I would, because I wasn't the kind of person that he was allegedly targeting. And so final stages, and the accusations are that he's used power and prestige to coerce people, an assortment of people, to sexually perform at the so-called freak-offs, which actually are more like orgies as opposed to freak-offs. Freak-offs is a very music industry term for these things. The defense is that this was consensual activity. Now, that all works really, really well until you get to the Cassie video. And the Cassie video, of course, which the allegations were that Sean or his team had paid money to the hotel staff so that that video never surfaced. Of course, that video did. And that video showed Sean Combs running down a hotel corridor where he dragged his girlfriend of 10 years back by her hair, and he kicked her in the head and did various other things. And then he came out, put out a video saying, that wasn't me, I was in a terrible place. Yeah, when I'm in a terrible place, I always drag people by the hair and kick them in the head, right? Because that's what people do, right? Joke. But the point is that his defense team are saying that that video has been manipulated. But the thing is the whole consensual argument doesn't work when you look at the video, because he was dragging that girl back by her hair. He was dragging her back by her hair as she was trying to leave. That isn't consent, right? Consent involves at least two people saying yes, right? So, but it's a difficult one for the prosecution, because they need to prove that Diddy engaged in a criminal enterprise, e.g. stealing, fraud, kidnapping, racketeering, prostitution. But what they've got to draw on is a whole lot of information, because Combs himself has put out a lot of information. The people at his parties have put out a lot of information, and they're going to be drawing on that as well. Cassie, again, star witness, we now know is pregnant. It's going to look bad in many respects, because the prosecution are seeking to portray her as somebody who was totally involved in his alleged criminal enterprise, totally involved in prostitution. Now, we talked about this on Friday. The optics of essentially calling a pregnant woman a prostitute is a terrible position to find yourself in if you're defending Sean Combs. It's a terrible position, absolutely terrible. But the prosecution are putting her up as their star witness, and we will see. It's interesting because the jurors, we're finding out more now about the jury selection, and the jurors were actually given a list of hundreds of names, rappers, musicians, congressmen and women, actors, actresses, and they were asked if there was anything about these names that may influence them when it came to deciding the case. And of course, it can make it tricky when you're picking a jury because this case is so well known. Who doesn't know about it? I mean, maybe people in Outer Mongolia, but certainly not any jurors in America. If he's found guilty, he will face life, but we shall see a long way to go on that at the moment. So I'm going to keep updating that. I find it interesting. I think a lot of people are involved. I consider this situation very, very similar to the Epstein situation, not least because people were being filmed, allegedly. Now, if they were being filmed, you're only situations like this, you're really only being filmed for one of two reasons. One is to give some kind of thrill to the person who's organizing the filming, but it's much more than that. It's much more than that. I believe, allegedly, that the filming took place because for blackmail purposes. And we saw this with Epstein, absolutely, unquestionably. There is nobody on this earth that can tell me now that Epstein was not involved with Mossad, obviously secret services for Israel, and was using his influences along with Ghislaine Maxwell and her father to find people, very powerful people in compromising situations. And hell, a lot of footage has arisen from that. But of course, you ain't seeing it anytime soon. Even though Pam Bondi, actually, I wonder if I just briefly, quickly, before I bring in my next guest, did you see this when Pam Bondi said this? And I think she was caught out. Pam Bondi, of course, is the Attorney General for the US, but she had been overheard by, I think it might have been James O'Keefe at dinner, talking about how they had loads of videos of Epstein with children. Right now, this has been my issue all along. I've talked about how the women who have come out as part of the Epstein story are gatekeepers for the truth. And I've always said, and I've always maintained that the real story is about the trafficking and abuse of children. It's not about teenage girls giving massages to rich men. That's not the story. The story is about child abuse. And it would appear that the Attorney General of America actually backs that up. Just have a brief listen to what she had to say.
All the Epstein files are missing. Can you confirm what we still haven't heard from you?
No, the FBI, the FBI, they're reviewing, there are tens of thousands of videos of Epstein with children or child porn.
Right. So they're saying all this now, right? It's interesting, isn't it? So they need to start moving. Now, it could be just a little theory I'm going to throw out to you kids. We opened the show about the alleged differences that are now taking place between Trump and Netanyahu. And one of the theories is that there's been a delay in releasing any of this Epstein information because it directly links to Israel and the problems there. Now, it could well be that the distancing that's going on between the Trump administration is in preparation and in readiness for this. Or am I just wishful thinking? Who knows? Who can tell? Right, let us move on and let's look at something completely different. Are we ready? Are we ready to look at something completely different? Let's do it. Let's bring on Thomas Godfrey. How are you, Tom?
I'm very well. Sonia, it's lovely to be here. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm good. I've got your book right here. Shift 10 Mindset Shifts for the Great Awakening. This was my Sunday afternoon reading on a very warm afternoon, not the heat wave that they promised us, but I was out there in the conservatory working through it. I've got at least 3 areas that are my favorites that I want to tackle. But before we get to that, it's great. And also you're going to be giving away a signed copy to our glorious viewers. So thank you very much for that. So tell us, am I okay to call you Tom? Because I'm going to keep slipping into it.
Of course. Yeah, please do. Yeah, please do, Sonia.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Lovely to have you with us. So you are I think what's known as, is it a mind transformational coach? Is that the accurate description?
That'll do until the accurate description gets here, I think.
Are you still concocting it? Are you still working with it?
Absolutely. It's
this
unfolding.
Is wonderful. Exactly. And that's what I like about it. There's a feeling in the book that as you are writing it, you're also discovering yourself as part of the process.
Wow, I love that. I love that reflection. Yeah, that's exactly, that's a brilliant way of describing it. It's a process of truth seeking within.
Talk to us, because many of us believe that over the last 5 years, following the whole lie, the C-19 lie, that there has been this exponential waking up of people. And it's certainly my experience. I have neighbors who were like complete gung-ho about C-19. And now after the fact, actually, I bumped into one yesterday and I said to him, oh, we've got to be inside by 11 o'clock because there's a heat wave. He said, you don't believe that crap, do you? Now, this is somebody who was like, how many boosters can I have? Climate change, right? But all of a sudden, he's now looking at the world in a different way. So talk to me about your great awakening. Small question to a big answer. Give us some insight.
Yeah, what a question. And thanks for the question. And exactly what you're describing there is what I sense is happening. That something has happened. I sense the Great Awakening has already happened. And what you're talking about there, so many people now, almost everyone you speak to is perhaps willing to consider questions they weren't even a year ago, right? Certainly 5 years ago. And as you say, the events of the last 5 years. So 5 years ago, I was a corporate guy deep in the world of healthcare and mental health care and big pharma and in it. And I think what happened 5 years ago was a huge wake up. I think the Great Awakening has happened. And I think the only thing now stopping it kind of spreading like wildfire is people believing they're in the silent minority.
Right. See, that's interesting, isn't it? And I tend to think that the Great Awakening has happened. And I also think that we still allow for the fact that some people, we're all on a different timeline, aren't we? And it's ridiculous I think comparison, as they say, is the thief of joy, right? So it's best not to compare ourselves to anybody. And we are on a different timeline. But nonetheless, there is something really big happening. I can see changes all around me. So when you say that, the description that you use for yourself, which is actually transformational mindset coach, what does that actually mean, though? What does it mean?
Yeah. A better description is truth seeker. And I've kind of stumbled across this, right? So I was, as I said, I was doing the corporate thing. I was kind of playing the character and doing the journey of success and trying to get somewhere and trying to build the persona. But I've always been asking questions. I've always been, that's not quite right, about the structure, about reality.
Things were wrong.
From forever, from as early as I can remember, I've always questioned things, and it's always been dismissed. So I kind of fell into coaching as a vehicle to ask questions. So I feel like I found something within myself that I knew was nothing to do with me. It's almost like beyond the person, beyond the character. And then since becoming a coach and helping other people to navigate their inner world, navigate their belief system, navigate all of their kind of limitation, it's become very apparent, it's become undeniable that we all share something deeper than the person, deeper than kind of the construct of the self.
People can be very cynical about coaching in the same way as people can be very cynical about podcasting, because pretty much anybody can do it these days, right? So what do you feel that your approach is that perhaps sets yourself apart? Go on, pitch yourself. Tell me.
My foundational premise has always been that you have the answers within you. And really that is the entire premise of the book. It's 10 mindset shifts for the Great Awakening, but really it's a guide to navigate finding the answers within. So because we've been so conditioned to seek, we've actually been conditioned to put beliefs ahead of anything, right? Ahead of truth. So, and what that means is we can get given any belief, really, right? We can really be convinced of anything ultimately, especially from when before we can think, when we're children. So so we grow up kind of having this reverence for beliefs, which what it does is it always puts someone in between you and truth. It always puts a third party there. And I'm saying there is no third party. You have a direct line, and all it takes is to ask the right questions. And that's really what the book is. It helps you to ask the right questions.
And I mean, they say there's nothing new under the sun, right? So most of us were inspired by somebody else who has blazed a trail. So, for example, I'm actually going to be talking about one of my heroes today, who's Bill Cooper, legendary truth teller, right? And I'm going to do a tribute to him. So tell me some of the influences that have inspired you to write this book.
So Neville Goddard, he was someone, I think he was around in the 20s, 30s, 40s. He wrote a book called The Power of Awareness. And it just cuts through everything. It is this message. It's saying that you're not going to find whatever it is that you think you are missing, because we're all kind of seeking something, right? It's all like, when I get there, then I'll be able to do this, or then I'll feel good enough, or then I'll feel I've achieved something. The message in The Power of Awareness is very simple. You are awareness. You are the ever-present awareness. You are the observer. You are the one who observes it all. So Neville Goddard was a huge inspiration. Bob Proctor, amazing man. He lived till his 80s, and he was still teaching this message of the power of the mind, really. The fact that we all have access to this thing called infinite potential. And I don't say this lightly. No. Potential is infinite. By definition, potential is anything that doesn't exist, right? And if you can think of it, if you can imagine it, it can be made real. And that isn't some sort of fantasy. It's like anything that has ever existed in human history was created twice. First of all, it was imagined, then it was created in the real world. So this whole idea of the power of awareness, the power of the mind, the power of human potential, and that's actually what's been leveraged against us, the power of the mind, to make you think that you are stuck in this kind of matrix of control and matrix of beliefs. And
the whole system is set up in many respects right from primary school in order to separate us as much as possible from our power, actually. And because I was born into a hippie family, it was all about kind of like, you do your own thing, all that sort of stuff. But my family, as the youngest, they celebrated me as somebody who was capable of doing anything they wanted to. We were born into a lot of poverty. I know. And so I've always believed that. Like, I've always believed that, because my family invested so much in me, and not in a narcissistic way, but because my brothers and sisters had experienced such hardships, they were determined, because I was a much younger sister, that I wasn't going to experience bullying or the same kind of poverty. And so they set it up all completely different. And I'm a living, breathing example of that. I left school with hardly anything, but I've gone on to realize almost every one of my dreams. And so I know what you're saying is accurate. I know it's accurate, and mindset is so vital. And the foreword is written with Will Mellor Blair, right? I think
Will Mellors Blair.
Mellors Blair, yeah. And wonderful foreword. And he's, I think, been involved with you coming up with these 10 mindset shifts, hasn't he? Who is he?
He's an amazing guy, amazing man. He's an entrepreneur. He's at the forefront of the intersection between AI and human potential. This whole thing about, what we're talking about here, human potential, he's now, so because a lot of people are afraid of AI and wondering like, what's it going to do, and is it a threat? And it is, if that's how it's viewed, or actually it could just be the ultimate liberator, as in it can do all the stuff that we at the moment we set our minds to do, but our minds are actually capable of doing so much more. Our minds are actually open to infinite creation. So he's doing that. He's doing there's a book. Yeah, thank you.
There it is.
It's available. It's available on Amazon. So he's doing the kind of human potential and AI stuff. We were working he was actually my mentor. So we were working together for a year, and the 10 mindset shifts in this book. So I'd been coaching people for a few years, and really just recognizing these patterns that were coming up over and over again. It's almost beyond the individual. It's almost beyond I keep talking about the character and the persona and the mask and, the whole thing. And it was something deeper than that I realized instantly when I found it in me that it was nothing to do with me. And then, so really this distills everything I've learned from coaching hundreds of people from all over the world, from all different backgrounds, all different stories, everything, all ages, both genders. It's all distilled down into really it's almost like these are the beliefs that we've all been programmed with.
Right.
It's almost like this is what you're going to come up against when you start to do the inward.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually
do the work, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but it's inner and outer at the same time, right? Because the whole, the whole conspiracy world, the whole it's not even conspiracy, the whole uncovering injustice. Right?
Yes.
Shining the light of truth, basically.
Yeah.
Right. In the outer world. That can only happen. I believe that can only happen when we're also doing the same thing internally. It's almost like a parallel expansion.
A lot of people don't realize that they need to set themselves onto a path in order to be able to start to receive these things. Some people just stay in the same thing over and over again. I've got a very strong streak of impatience in me. And if I see people keep repeating the same thing over and over again while complaining about it, I'm done. I can't cope with that sort of thing because it's like I'm proactive. So if I don't like something, I change it. Right. But I also understand, again, we're all on different timelines, but there are some chapters that really resonated more with me than others, which brings me to it. And one of them is reacting to responding. One of the biggest lessons I think for people in maturity is to learn to respond to something rather than instantly react to it. And immediately I read that chapter, I was like, this resonates so strongly with me. And actually you give form to something that I've come to understand about myself. Expand on that a bit more for me.
Yeah, what an amazing example. Reacting and responding, they're used interchangeably. Right. But they couldn't, and they are they're kind of intertwined, but they couldn't be more different. So the idea here, the shift from reacting to responding, is reacting happens without you. It's unconscious. It happens, and then you realize, oh man, I've reacted again. Like, what's going on? It's like the whole triggers thing. Whereas responding is, and this is the difference between being conscious and unconscious, and there's no judgment attached to this.
Sure.
Conscious and unconscious. It just is like we are unconscious. We are living from our subconscious for 95 to 99% of the day. That's just how we operate.
We are
don't have to.
That's right. Doing without thinking, though, aren't we? And a lot of it is automatic. We breathe without thinking.
Yeah.
If we're able-bodied, we walk and talk oftentimes without thinking. More's the worry. But it's the same thing,
helpful.
Isn't it? It's helpful. But then as you start to develop in your spiritual journey, you realize that actually those triggers are also, it's like a minefield, isn't it, that you walk into? Like you say, we react without thinking because it's triggered something in us. Give people a little insight how they can work with that side of themselves.
This is such a great example. So this is the most ridiculous part about all of this, about the reacting thing. So first of all, it's a separation from reacting to responding, and it's just recognizing, okay, I've reacted. Okay.
Right.
That's the first thing. It's just becoming aware. I've reacted. No judgment attached to it. I've reacted. Cool. It's recognizing your own patterns and not needing to tell a story about what that means. It doesn't say anything about you. It's just a pattern. We've all just built them up. So that's the first thing, is just being able to observe it compassionately, really, without self-judgment. And that is kind of difficult because we're all beating ourselves up and saying, and like you say, comparing ourselves and all of the stuff that's attached to the ego, right? So it's recognizing that reacting and responding are completely different. Reacting happens without you. That's all good. Responding, the only difference between reacting and responding is there's just this pause, this conscious present pause, and it's not even for any amount of time. It's just the acknowledgement that it exists. So it's just recognizing that when a thing happens out here, it's already in the past. First of all, it's already in the past. By the time you've processed it, it's already gone. It's already a split second in the past.
Absolutely true.
So everything that is happening, that is apparently happening, you're observing the past, right? So that means immediately you're not obliged to react to anything. So it's just introducing that awareness, that presence, that conscious present pause, observe, allow, because you've got no choice but to allow, because it's already happened anyway, and then breathe, and then you can choose your response. And most of the time, there is no response required. There's no response required.
That is the other thing that I think people need to learn is not everything deserves a response, literally. And again, we've been geared up, I think, very much in our internet age, and especially on social media, this whole idea of I have to have the last say. My actual picture on X is of me like this because I'm turning the other cheek because I don't have time for this shite. I literally don't, right? It's a big world out there. And if somebody disagrees with me, and what? It doesn't require me to try and convince them of anything. So I really like that idea of learning to respond rather than react. And the other thing that I wanted, there's a few things, but I'm not going to have time. But the one that I definitely must tackle with you is the victim to creator, because I think that's important. We have a lot of situations in this world, and I often quote Chris Rock, who said there are real victims in this world, but the emergency room is full of people with paper cuts. And I think that's a really interesting quote. A lot of people feel that they have become victims for some reasons, don't they? And so talk to us about that.
How long have we got?
Not long, 5 minutes.
I'm going to frame it a little bit.
Go.
The victimhood paradigm. So first of all, it's a very charged word, and it's attached to the cause and effect paradigm. We believe we live in a cause and effect reality. We believe if a thing happens over there, it does something over there. And that is true. That is true to a certain extent. But here's how it plays into this idea of the victimhood paradigm. Because we have been conditioned to seek a cause of everything before we could think, this is the subconscious program. When I feel a certain way in my body, I'm immediately looking for a reason, looking for a cause, looking for a story, looking for a thing outside of myself.
Right.
And it's always going to be there. So that's the first thing. We're always looking for it anyway, so we're always going to find it. But this idea of victimhood, and it is such a charged word, and
you're not downplaying. I will point out to people that there is no victim shaming going on in this book. Just to be absolutely clear, this is very much about empowering yourself. But
100%.
just to say there, what is the role of blame in all of that?
Yeah, well, spot on. Blame is the manifestation, the outward manifestation of victimhood. I've got to qualify victimhood because there is no blaming.
Go on.
Whatever happened, right? Your experience is real. How I'm going to summarize victimhood is no one can tell you you're a victim except for you. And by the same token, no one can tell you you're not a victim except for you. So it becomes this self-identity. You get to decide if you're a victim. That's the message. It's not talking about like what you experience is real. There's no attachment to anything. Your life is your life. Your experience is your experience. But you get to decide if you're a victim or a creator. That's the ultimate message. It's the ultimate message of empowerment.
It really is, because it puts you, the thing about this book is it puts you at the center of your own universe, which is where I think you should be. And I don't mean that in any narcissistic, egotistical way, but it puts you in charge. It literally puts you in charge. It tells you are in charge, right? That you are capable of creating this. And the other thing that I like about it is it feels practical. A lot of these books, again, going back to the cynicism that's often attached to them, is they're a bit like chocolate. They're on your tongue for 1 minute and then they're gone, and it's all a bit woo-woo, and like you can't really nail it it down. But that's not at all the message of this book at all. It is very much about almost a practical application of how to become your very best self. And we're going to give away a copy. Do you like my reviews, Tom? Do you like my reviews?
That's a beautiful review. You've summed it up better than I've been able to, so
Good.
I appreciate you.
But that often happens, isn't it? Doesn't it? When people ask me to write like brief biog of myself, I can't do that. I absolutely can't do that. I find those things hard. It's very hard, you know. And I always say to my daughter, who can be quite self-deprecating because she's very talented, and I say to her, thank goodness you're like that, otherwise you'll be an arsehole. Because you know, when people are really capable and everything, if they're full of themselves, then they become horrible. But if they're actually, you know, humble and have some humility, which you have. So we're giving away a copy of this. People, you know the rules, and that is by 6 p.m. tomorrow night, I will pick out one random winner. Please write to Sonia Poulton at sky.com, put book in the subject, and one random winner will get a signed copy of this from Tom. Tom, before you leave, give us a message for the world. That's a big pause for broadcasting, Tom. Go on.
You are not your thoughts. You are the observer of thought.
Nice one. Love it very much. Everybody, this is Tom Godfrey. Lovely to have you with us, Tom. Have a fantastic Monday. Take good care of yourself. And thank you for writing this book. Take care of yourself.
Thank you so much.
Tom Godfrey, everybody. Lovely to talk to you. Take care. Lovely. What a thoughtful individual. What a very thoughtful individual. How are you in the comments? Cynical as ever? What's going on? What is going on? Soldier, was that a book plug like product placement? No, I'm not being paid for it. I'm not being paid for it. And I plug what I want to round here. If I believe something deserves plugging, I will plug it. There you go. And what else have we got going on here? Right. Did I mention Wayne Leighton at the start of the show? Please, can somebody remind me in the comments? Everything's going so fast today, but I wanted to give out a message from Wayne Leighton. Did I mention him? Can somebody tell me, who's been here from the start, whether I mentioned Wayne Leighton? Did I? And thanks for encoding thoughts, Tom. What's that? It's Sonia's show. What's that? Why are you saying that, Blue Nomad? What's that? Yeah, I'm the only one not selling CBD. Actually, I will tell you that we have now had a conversation with the person who I'm likely going to be doing the first promotion with, and she's an extremely talented artist. And we had a meeting with her last week, and we're really excited. She sells her work in America, and she's going to be getting involved with Wake Up. And probably the first thing that she's likely to do is a portrait of me that will go on our merchandise. It's exciting. Oh, I see. Yeah, Blue Nomad. I can show anything I want. Absolutely. Absolutely, I can. Yes, right. Oh, yeah, I'm not part of the welcome. I mean, isn't everybody in alternative media now part of the welcome team, aren't they? Let me just see. So did I mention Wayne Leighton? Did I mention Wayne Leighton? Because Wayne Leighton, we still don't know whether the hearing is going to go ahead tomorrow or not. Wayne Leighton, of course, was on with us recently. If I haven't mentioned him, I'm sorry, everything's going so fast. If I haven't mentioned him, Wayne Leighton was on with us recently, and he proved the illegality of bailiffs and anybody on behalf of council tax. No, I didn't. Thank you, Blue Nomad. I'm having one of those days. Thank you. Thank you so much. Anyway, so, right. So what Wayne is saying, because a lot of people had contacted me yesterday saying on his Facebook group, he's talking about how he's not sure if the hearing is going ahead tomorrow. And I have a message from him, and let me read it. As I say, it was supposed to be a high court hearing tomorrow, but last minute hitch from the other side, who are, of course, the Ministry of Justice. Wayne has this to say. Hello, Sonia. I hope you are well. Yes, that is accurate. And Wayne goes on to say that he's been working all weekend trying to save the hearing by narrowing issues down and even making concessions to enable enough time. And apparently the Ministry of Justice have just announced right at the last minute that they need 2 hours for the hearing, and it's only listed for 1 hour. And as far as I'm concerned, they're just literally making up stuff as they go along to delay this. And Wayne said it might still be saved. Yeah, he'll get a definitive answer from the High Court today. So keep checking on his Facebook group, which I believe is Stop Abuse Now. Lenticular Cloud, he's my hero. I love him, really. I do. I think he's absolutely brilliant. Swiss Miss, I've asked Amazing Polly. She's not, me and her get on well, but for whatever reason, she's been tagged on X and whatever, and she's still not with us. So let's hope she will be, because she's done, actually, as far as I'm concerned, the best research into the wholesale buy-up of the alternative media. Yes, Darren, Wayne has done tremendous work. I love to see people fighting back as well. So yeah, updates on his Facebook page, which is absolutely fantastic. Right. Gorgeous people. Let me see what I definitely want to talk about with you, because I don't want to. Yeah, I'm going to go in on this. Let's go in on this, because my fear is that we'd run out of time, and I don't want that to happen. Just to say briefly, today, of course, would be Maddie McCann's birthday, May the 12th. I think she would have been 22. Emails over the weekend asking me if I was going to cover the Channel 4 documentary. I did on Friday's show, and it's also available as a standalone video by request. And I've had requests to bring a few people on the show to talk about the case, including Deception Detective. And I like Deception Detective, and I approached him, and he said his interviews is not really his thing. He said, but if there's a video that I want him to analyze, so people, I'm throwing this out to you. What video on behalf of Wake Up, of anybody in the world, shall we ask Deception Detective to look at for us? What shall we? Anybody tell me? Just let me know. Let me know. Feel free to email me that as well. I noticed that there was an article in the Mail over the weekend about the inspiring lives of the talented McCann twins, who grew up in the shadow of their missing big sister, Maddie, as friends reveal the family's pride at their younger sister's success. What a crock of PR. And by the way, the name Tracy Candola was on it. And if an article has the name Tracy Candola on it, you can be assured it's come from the McCanns or Clarence Mitchell, if he's still around, their sometime spokesperson. Tracy Candola has been on this from the start. She is absolutely a gatekeeper of the story and a pusher of it. And she flogs left, right, and center. She's as tabloid a hack as you possibly can get. And just to say, tonight on X, Madeleine Kay's Tweets is hosting a space, I believe, at 8 p.m. with Natalie and Craig. And Madeleine Kay's Tweets, run by Isabel, is one of the longest serving accounts to cover this case. So highly recommended, highly recommended. Briefly, about Lucy Letby and these people. Why does that come up? This happens sometimes, doesn't it? Here's what I like about MP David Davis. Bottom picture, the white guy. He is like a dog with a bone. Pretty sure we would disagree on a zillion things politically, but when it comes to potential miscarriages of justice, we are definitely on the same page. And he is definitely in the corner of Lucy Letby. And he is now calling for Dr. J. Ram, who is the other gentleman, to be investigated for potential perjury. And so David Davis is a Tory MP. He's demanded that Cheshire Police open a formal perjury investigation into the testimony of Dr. J. Ram. And this is based on the existence of an email. And an email says, sent by Dr. Ravi J. Ram, appears to contradict testimony he later gave that helped convict Lucy Letby at her murder trial. And we've seen this a lot now. We've seen that some of the leading people who testified for the prosecution, there are problems attached to them. Simon, is that the first time you've seen Dr. J. Ram? Well, there you go. Saw it first, kids. But it's like, this is a snowball that started at the top, and already we're halfway down the mountain, and it's already crafted into a snow family, right? Terrible analogy there that I've used. But, you get my point, right? Is that this, I would be highly surprised if the CCRC now refuse the opportunity of an appeal. I think that the evidence, the alternative evidence, is overwhelming. So we shall see. Right. Milton William Cooper. Let me bring in some images of him. What does he mean to any of you? What does he mean to any of you? Let me bring in an image of him. Here he is. Right. There's some questions there, but I daren't go to them. It's going to throw me off from talking about this guy. So feel free to email me any questions that I don't answer. Right. Let's start with this. According to Wiki, Milton William Bill Cooper was an American conspiracy theorist. That's how they describe him. They also say he's a radio broadcaster, which is true, and an author. If you are not familiar, you will be. And first of all, he was not a conspiracy theorist, right? He was a man who had tremendous insight and foresight about numerous actual conspiracies that are taking place in our world. He said famously, read everything, listen to everyone, but believe nothing until you can prove it with your own research. And these are words that I try and live by. In his time, he was an author, a radio host, a military intelligence office. He lived on military bases because of his father. His father was in the army. He said, I was as establishment as you could get. I was pro-American, pro-military. Now, in this internet age where there are a zillion voices offering up truth, or at least claiming to, but when I was coming up, this was the man. He, along with just a few others, a small handful, but it was primarily down to Bill Cooper. And some people call him Milt, some call him Cooper. I call him Bill, but I never got to meet him or interview him. And I try not to have any regrets in my life. But if I have any, that's one of them. And as I say, he was absolutely at the forefront. And I feel sometimes that we have an overabundance of people claiming to tell the truth, because a lot of it is contrary. And one example that's good, but the problem is a lot of the lies are just taking over any form of truth at all. But I like him, very much liked him. His investigations and his research was forensic because of his history. As I say, he was a foremost researcher, author, and lecturer. I do not call him a conspiracy theorist. He talked about a number of unspeakable at the time topics, and still unspeakable. Right? The truth about UFOs, the truth about HIV and AIDS, the truth about the JFK assassination, the truth about the moon landing and more, the truth about Osama bin Laden. Like a laser beam, he cut through the mess to tell his truth. And he considered himself a messenger, and I believe that he fulfilled his mission. His awakening and how he knew about global cover-ups and the role secret societies play in all this is very interesting, how he came about it. First of all, he was trained in Pacific Area Intelligence briefing. And he said it was a wonderful job. And this is where mainstream, when they talk about him, they like to try and downplay. They would say that he was a junior clerk and all that. And he doesn't even try and hide that, right? He said it was a wonderful job. He came in about 4 a.m. He'd go through the messages for the military bosses. He would prepare for briefing on what was happening in their area for their commander. He would update on operations and political situations. And he said by 8 to 10 in the morning, they were done for the day. He said it's really just a wonderful job. And but he did have to have security clearance to do this job. If you look at mainstream sources, they deny it. They say he was essentially nothing more than an office clerk, because they will play him down. They will downplay him. Anyway, this is the story of his awakening. I'm going to repeat because I think it's a fascinating one and a real insight into him. And it's up to you whether you believe it or not, obviously. In 1966, he was serving aboard the USS Tiru when he and a fellow Navy personnel witnessed what they described as a metal craft larger than a football field repeatedly enter and exit the water. And he described it, and I've heard him in interview describe it. He said it was a huge disc-shaped craft. It rose from the ocean. It was huge. It was a tremendously big object. It came out the ocean. It turned on its axis, and then it went into the clouds. And he said he did that this happened on repeat. They didn't know if it was the same vehicle that was doing it or whether it was a series, and whether this was some sort of route from the cloud to the sea and the sea to the cloud. But they had witnesses, including the captain, including the crew. It happened for about 10 minutes. He said that they took pictures of it, and then he and the rest of the crew were subjected to secrecy when they were docked. Right? They had a debriefing, that people came on board and said you didn't see what you thought you saw, and all this sort of stuff. And that's how he says that he knew there was deep corruption going on and lies to do with, well, UFOs and all manner of other things, right? But again, he said it was what was happening was beyond the technology that we knew about at the time, because in 1966, when it happened, we didn't know something whereby something could be in water. I mean, the way he described it, he actually said the water opened up in front of them to like allow this vehicle or whatever it was in. He said the sea actually parted. He said it was incredible. They didn't know what they were even looking at. He said it was definitely metal. It was a machine. He said it wasn't glowing, wasn't like lights, how we've come to understand UFOs as one example. He said, I can't say there was anyone inside, but he believed that there was. And as he said, this was technology that was way above and beyond 1966, and he couldn't make sense of it. And he said that as far as we knew at the time, this technology didn't exist, and he was subject to essentially what was NDAs of the day. And as I say, claimed there were witnesses, captains even took pictures, of which, of course, we've never seen, unless you have. If you have, send them to me. But as I say, when they berthed, the commander came on board, debriefed them. They did not see or hear anything. There was a threat of prison. And he learned that the US Navy didn't want anyone to know what was seen, and that there would be severe consequences if he spoke out. And that was when he said he knew there were massive cover-ups between government and goodness knows what else, including UFO. Of course, he's an author of many, many books, but I think you'll find he's probably most famous for this beauty. Behold a Pale Horse. In 1991, Cooper wrote and published Behold a Pale Horse, and it covered so many of the important topics that were under his research, such as UFO cover-up, the Kennedy assassination, and the Illuminati takeover of America, and a future one world totalitarian socialist society ruled by secret societies. And tell me, what part of that is a lie? I like all of that. And that's why I object when mainstream sources like a Wikipedia, for example, and I always find it quite instructive to always check what they're saying, because you can bet that they are, you know, their state government mouthpiece, basically. But he was absolutely right. There has been this parasitical elitist takeover to create a one world government reality. And but Behold a Pale Horse is very interesting. In it, he asserts that President John F. Kennedy was assassinated because he was about to reveal that extraterrestrials were in the process of taking over the earth. He came back on that to a certain degree as his interests developed, but he was in no doubt whatsoever that we were lied to about all manner of things, including HIV and AIDS. And he's not the first person to say that, and he certainly won't be the last. At one stage, he became very famous within kind of ufology circles, and because of the claiming of seeing these kind of secret documents and being subject to NDA as one example. And what happened was in 1988, that was when he first started to make his first public comments about this. And what actually brought him largely into the public domain was John Lear, the son of Learjet founder Bill Lear, approached him, and they started working together. Because the thing is, John Lear had said that he had flown missions for the CIA. He completely related to what Bill Cooper was saying. He said, you're right, you're absolutely right. They worked together for a period of time. And Lear at the time was the author of a post titled The UFO Cover-Up. And they spent time together. And over the next 2 years, they worked together. Cooper was heavily influenced by Lear. I'm pretty sure about that. And together they created what was a joint indictment against the US government for aiding and abetting and concealing this alien nation which exists in our borders. They eventually had a bit of a falling out. Cooper accused Lear of being a CIA plant. It does come with the territory, unfortunately, whether it's true or not. It is very easy to believe that people who are coming close to you may not be working with you. And but I think that where Cooper really came into his own was his understanding of all the secret groups, right? Such as, for example, he talked extensively about the Bilderberg Group, about the Knights of Columbus, about Masons, about Skull and Bones, about the Trilateral Commission, about the Council on Foreign Relations. And he said that the ultimate goal of all of these groups coming together was the establishment of a new world order. But he's not lying, though. We can see it, literally see it. And so a lot of people believe that the work that he'd done with the UFO was actually, it didn't do him any favors, that it was much better when he was far more focused on these secret societies. That's what many people thought. Had a very famous radio show. I love listening to it even now. which he ran from 1992 until 2001. There are still copies on the internet called The Hour of the Time. And he did that from a studio in his house at the top of the hill of a small white mountain town in Arizona, about 15 miles from the New Mexico border. And what he would do is he would this just tells you the difference between then and now, of course, was that he would record it all on an audio cassette or a satellite patch, and then he would transfer that through to WWCR in Nashville, who would then play it. Had lots and lots of fans. It was rumored at one stage that Oklahoma City bomber Timothy McVeigh was one of his fans. Who knows? Who can tell? And I mean, there's very few topics of the time that Bill Cooper wasn't prepared to delve into and expose, including what was going on at the Waco siege as one example. And also, he foretold the issues to do with Osama bin Laden in June 2001. He gave a television interview and he talked about Osama bin Laden, and he claimed that bin Laden would soon be blamed for a major attack on a large US city. And he concluded by saying, but don't you believe it? Well, July, August, 3 months later, of course, that was when 9/11 happened. Of course, bin Laden was absolutely blamed, and many people still believe that he was absolutely responsible for it. That's what many people believe. So the thing is that so Bill Cooper tackled 9/11 almost straight from the start. He began broadcasting about the controlled demolition theory on the day of the attacks, which eventually became a center of kind of like 9/11 conspiracy ideas. Whether he was right or wrong on that, I don't know. Certainly there is evidence to suggest that there was another state of affairs, as one of our recent guests outlined, as Dr. Judy Woods has talked about the clouds as one example. But bear in mind that he was talking about 9/11 right from the beginning, and that was before you have the benefit of what everybody else has also thought about it as well and can add all that intelligence together. But he was still an absolute, as far as I'm concerned, he was an unprecedented thinker in many respects. I think he was exemplary. His death is still shady as anything. Happened on fireworks night, November the 5th, 2001. They say there are no coincidences, people. Let me bring in a more current image of him. Here he is. So what happened was he was killed by sheriff's deputies. So they claimed their side, but we obviously do not have his side because he's dead. They killed him, and what they claimed was that he had shot at them first, and during an attempted arrest, they said that they were trying to arrest him on charges of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon and endangerment stemming from disputes with local residents. Well, here's what happens when you kill someone. You can say what the hell you want about them. He was not just a thorn in the side. He was a crater in the side of the American government and elsewhere. And what the story they gave, the official story, was that there was an exchange of gunshot. It was claimed that Cooper shot one of the deputies in the head. True or false? We literally only have their word for it. And the thing is that Cooper was very much part of my growing up in many respects. As a hip hop journalist in the 90s, there were loads of acts who were citing him as an inspiration, including Public Enemy and Tupac. And in popular culture, for example, he was mentioned in like the X-Files films, features the name Cooper, which is something of a homage, I think. And I'm not sure what he would think about today's so-called truth tellers, but I do know what he thought about one, and that is Alex Jones. He hated Alex Jones. He described Alex Jones as a bold-faced, stinking little liar, and he repeated it so there was no confusion. Bill Cooper is head and shoulders above the rest, as far as I'm concerned. He absolutely understood his mission. Interesting suggestion there. I'll have a look at that in a minute. He understood his mission. He was a messenger, and he inspired me. And for that, I thank him very, very much. And one of the things that he said is just look at the world in a different way. Every single king, lord, governor, ruler, military medal, award, citation, trophy, banner, and more, they are all instruments of governments working against us. And he knew, and he was right, that their aim was a worldwide totalitarian socialist government. And some of his last broadcasts, he said, these are historic broadcasts. And in making these broadcasts, I have sealed my fate. He knew. he knew. Here is to Bill Cooper. And, my brother once said to me is that they can kill a person, but they cannot kill what that person stood for. And that is how I see Bill Cooper. And I feel quite emotional even talking about him and the impact that he had on me. And incredible person, incredible human. I have to make sure to finish before 11 o'clock, people. Right. I'm coming on to the last thing now. Thanks, Bill Cooper. Thanks for everything. Thanks for the inspiration. Very much appreciate it. Donators, thank you to every single person who makes Wake Up possible. I appreciate you greatly. Lots of requests for merchandise. We are literally, as I said earlier, in talks right now. And yes, some of it, I promise, will feature the wording "Good Morning Grand Rising," which seems to be extremely popular from people who write in. They say, why can't I have a mug saying "Good Morning Grand Rising"? You can. And people want to know, why don't I have a merchandise range already? I know it doesn't make sense. I'm an established journalist, I'm a public figure. Why don't I have a merchandise range? And because everybody does, right? But not me, right? The thing about me is I'm slow with these things. Have you not already noticed that? I've always been and will always be content before business. That's who I am. I was putting videos on YouTube, including documentaries, for 7 years before I was even monetized. Almost all my documentaries that are on YouTube and other platforms have been made privately and without public funding. And I know that may sound foolish, right? That I have not capitalized on my work. And to a degree, it's true. But it also means that I have provably not been driven to do this for money. I'm motivated to create content and put information out there for a force much bigger than money, actually. And I'm proud of that. And people know that they can't attach that to me. And I consider that a good and decent grounding for what I do on Wake Up. And of course, Wake Up absolutely needs money to survive and grow. Yes, it does. And so I'm extremely grateful to each and every person who has made that possible in the first year of our birth. And we are soon approaching our 1 year anniversary. And of course, I could not have done this without any of you. That's not a cliche, but a statement of fact. I needed your support to enable me to show up 3 times a week and focus solely on our show, not take any other jobs, but do this. And that is what I'm doing. I'm not even giving other interviews. At the last count, I had 27 invites from all over the world, and I've refused every one of them because I want to focus only on Wake Up and growing Wake Up. And I tell you all that to explain why I haven't had any merchandise properly so far. We had a test run with mugs. We worked out the issues attached with learning about these things, and now we are preparing to launch a full range. And the other question that I get asked often, and that is, what about YouTube membership? Which also brings me to that question. Why don't I have YouTube membership? Literally for the same reason as above. Making money has not been my focus. People tell me off for it, but it's a reality. Creating a strong body of work, a library of work, that's my priority. But I will do YouTube membership now as part of that package. And there will be discounts on merchandise and access to the monthly behind the scenes video. And as I say, we're soon approaching our first birthday, our first year. We are growing in the thousands week on week. And thank you for being part of our progress. And I love you to bits. And thank you, all of you. Thank you so much. And before we go today, I want to briefly talk about death and rebirth. Following on from Friday's last comment about not looking back because you're not going that way, the theme of new beginnings continues here, and that is amplified by the full moon in Scorpio today, May the 12th. And obviously that where it's at its fullest would largely depend where you are in the world. Scorpio is a very powerful sign associated with transformation, release, rebirth, and coming into one's own power. And I thought I would use this end comment to help anyone who may be interested to use the astrological alignments available to us for the advancement of your own personal journey. I'm a Scorpio moon and I get vibes. I absolutely get vibes. I pick up vibrations from people all the time, like what they're thinking. I pick up vibrations of who's going to comment me all the time. I know if people are betraying me while being nice to my face. I know it. I pick it up like nobody's business, and they know I know it, right? So full moons are powerful, and Scorpio full moon is a very powerful time. And full moons generally represent the end of a 6-month cycle. Everything that you've manifested, worked on, and created may actually now come full circle by the end of this kind of lunar cycle. And this period as well, full moons are often associated with miracles, because and I think none more so than now, because if Scorpio is a death and rebirth, what is more miraculous than a death and rebirth of oneself? And I'm not talking literally. Obviously, we can have many deaths and rebirths in our lives, whether that's to do with finances or love or career or job or direction or motivation. My attitude a lot of the time is just build it and they will come, right? But first of all, you have to start by believing in miracles. I'm a miracle believer, right? And sometimes people are cynical before they've even applied themselves. They want to spend their lives in the same mosh pit of going nowhere fast, and they want to bring others down with them. Well, that is not my course. And if you know such people, please limit your exposure to them. Today, as much as any other day, they are determined to paint the world entirely dark when that is far from the truth. And I feel that right about now has all the ingredients to assist your evolution, to rise from the ashes, be like a phoenix coming out of the flames, right? And Scorpio people, when you meet them, very self-possessed people, they're typified by being bold, self-assured. And so whether you believe in all that full moon stuff or not, it's kind of irrelevant, actually. If it's time to change your life and transform, then do so. There is no time like the present. Just do it. Literally just do it. Lay down all the reasons, all the objections to it, and see this as a sign to make that change. Please do. And on that note, I am going to leave you and be back on Wednesday, of course. And this is a transformative period. And I believe that just kind of starting this period as a no moderation zone feels just right for me. And again, nothing to do with my mods who are absolutely brilliant. This is about me and about how I want Wake Up to be. And again, thank you to my mods who have been there over the last year, your stars. And I'm going to end on a quote, because that's what I like to do about around here. And that is, the most authentic thing about us is our capacity to create, to overcome, to endure, to transform, to love, and to be greater than our suffering. Indeed, it is. Lovely people. I will see you on Wednesday. Have a wonderful, wonderful full moon day. Have a brilliant Tuesday. Take good care of yourself. Thanks for being here. Your stars. See you Wednesday, everybody. Lots of love.